You know, there's a simple principle I've lived by for decades, and it's this: where your focus goes, your energy flows. That's not just a motivational slogan, it's a psychological truth. What you focus on consistently shapes how you feel, how you behave, and ultimately the quality of your life. But here's the kicker. Most people are unconsciously focused on everything but themselves. They're focused on comparison. They're focused on other people's opinions. They're focused on noise, on distraction, on drama. And they wonder why they feel drained, why they feel stuck, why their life feels out of alignment. When you start focusing on yourself, not in a narcissistic way, but in an elevated way, you begin to rewire the entire direction of your life. Think about it. Your mind is like a lens. If you constantly aim it outward, you absorb chaos. You internalize narratives that don't belong to you. But if you turn the lens inward and you start asking better questions, who am I becoming? What do I value? What am I feeding my mind, my body, my soul? Then everything begins to change. There's a concept in neuroscience called selective attention. It means that the brain filters out most of what's happening around you so it can zero in on what you've told it is important. That's why if you buy a red car, suddenly you see red cars everywhere. You're not seeing more red cars, they've always been there. You're just now tuned into them. Life works the same way. If you're tuned into fear, you're going to find more of it. If you're tuned into what you lack, you'll keep seeing everything that's missing. But if you're focused on building, on evolving, on creating, your brain starts scanning the world for opportunities that match that energy. Now, this takes discipline, it takes intention, because the default setting of the mind is survival. It wants comfort, it wants familiarity. And that's why so many people live the same year 75 times and call it a life. They're stuck in loops, focused on the past, focused on the noise. But you're here because something inside you wants more. And to get more, you've got to focus better. Not harder, better. Not everywhere, but inward. This is why silence is so powerful, because in the silence, you remove external influence. You begin to hear your own thoughts. Not the voice of your parents, not the opinions of society, not the expectations of the world, but your voice. And when that voice gets clear, your direction becomes obvious. You don't need permission. You don't need applause. You just need alignment. And here's the truth. When you focus on yourself, you're not withdrawing. You're preparing. You're recalibrating. You're getting ready to show up in the world in a more powerful way. People will notice the shift. They'll feel it, because focused energy is felt. It's not always loud, but it's undeniable. So ask yourself, what would happen if starting today you became ruthlessly intentional with your focus? What would your life begin to look like if you gave your energy only to what actually feeds your future? Most people are terrified of silence, not just external silence, the kind where no one's texting, calling, or expecting a response, but internal silence, the quiet that happens when there's no distraction, no stimulation, no noise, and yet silence is where clarity is born. It's in that space where nothing is demanding your attention, that everything important finally has room to surface. We live in a world that worships noise, constant updates, constant opinions, endless stimulation, and because of that, we rarely get the opportunity to just be. But here's the problem. If you never sit with yourself, if you never create space to listen inward, then you're always operating from reaction instead of reflection. You're not making decisions, you're being moved by momentum that isn't even yours. Silence is powerful because it confronts you with the truth. It strips away the masks. It reveals what you've been avoiding. And while that can be uncomfortable, it's also the birthplace of transformation. Think of it like a reset. When you pause the world, even just for a few minutes, you create the space for something deeper to emerge. And that something is you. Not your conditioned self, not your curated identity, but your core, your authentic self. Philosophers have spoken about this for centuries. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, wrote about the importance of withdrawing into oneself to gain clarity and strength, not escaping life, but stepping back to see it more clearly. It's the same reason monks retreat into silence, not because they hate the world, but because they want to understand it without distortion. We don't need to disappear into the mountains to access that kind of peace. We just need to stop running from ourselves. And that's really what silence requires, courage. It's easy to fill your life with activity, with noise, with people. What's harder is to get quiet long enough to ask, what am I actually feeling? What do I actually need? Am I living in alignment with my highest values, or am I just checking boxes to avoid disappointing people? These questions don't have quick answers, but silence invites them to rise. Psychologically, there's something else happening here. The brain's default mode network, the part active when you're not focused on external tasks, lights up in silence. This is when we engage in introspection, when we process our experiences and form a deeper sense of self. So silence doesn't slow you down. It helps you integrate. It helps you connect the dots between who you are and who you're becoming. And here's what's beautiful. The more you embrace silence, the less you need to explain yourself. You no longer crave external validation because you've made peace with your internal compass. You speak less, but when you do, it carries weight. You stop chasing noise because you've found depth. So here's the question. Are you brave enough to get quiet, to sit in the silence, not to escape the world, but to finally meet yourself in it? There's something deeply liberating that happens when you stop chasing, when you stop trying to prove, to impress, to earn your worth in someone else's eyes. And it's not about arrogance, it's about alignment. Because when you're constantly trying to chase approval, attention, or love, what you're really saying is, I don't believe I'm enough unless something or someone out there confirms it. But the truth is, the most magnetic people you'll ever meet are the ones who've stopped chasing entirely. They've turned inward, done the work, and built something within themselves that others can't help but feel. You see, real power is quiet. It doesn't beg. It doesn't perform. It doesn't need to be validated every 5 minutes. And when you stop chasing, you begin to embody that power, not because you're trying to be seen, but because you're finally seeing yourself. We're conditioned to believe that if we want something, success, love, respect, we have to hustle for it. And yes, effort matters. But there's a difference between aligned effort and desperate chasing. When you're in alignment, your actions come from fullness, not fear. You're building from a place of wholeness, not trying to fill a void. And that energy, people feel it. You don't have to say much. You don't have to explain yourself. You just are. And that being carries more influence than any sales pitch ever could.